Vladimir Guerrero Jr. going forward after this year. Say see you later to Pete Alonso. What's going on, Met fans? I am Ray. Welcome back to another episode of MetCast, where we bring you all the latest Mets news and content. Make sure if you're enjoying this content to like and subscribe. Turn that notification bell on so you never miss an upload. So tonight, SNY had a detailed breakdown with Andy Martino onto why or why not this news with Vladimir Guerrero coming out. Allegedly, there's been a couple different sides here, but allegedly the demand from Vladimir Guerrero to the Toronto Blue Jays was a 15+ year contract in the $600+ million range, something crazy for a first baseman. It would be the largest contract handed out to a first baseman in MLB history. And maybe that's why we saw the report very recently, right as camp was getting ready to start, from Jeff Passan saying that Toronto Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero were nowhere in the stratosphere of one another of agreeing to a contract. You saw guys like Hector Gomez out there and other reporters saying that the Toronto Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. prior to spring training starting were working towards a deal. And it actually, some people reported that a deal appeared to be imminent, which clearly was simply not the case. And it's bad reporting, once again, which we've seen all over MLB this offseason. Let's not forget the New York Mets were in the 5th position, allegedly, in requiring Juan Soto. The Red Sox were within minutes of getting him at one point. Then it was the Yankees were going to get the last shot. Then the Yankees didn't get the last shot. Then the Mets were a front runner. And then all of a sudden, the Mets get him. So you got to be careful who you trust. Obviously, we know the top guys to trust in regard to the Mets especially. But Andy Martino broke down why or why not the New York Mets would be a potential fit for him this next offseason. And I got some thoughts on it. Let's check it out. So here is Andy Martino's breakdown in regard to the Vladimir Guerrero situation.
He went on to say, and I think this is the key point, Sal, to what I make out of this from a Mets perspective is, well, now he's not going to be a Met probably, is because he said, I'm looking for 13, 14, 15 years. And so if the Mets weren't going...
Let's remember, just because you're looking for that doesn't mean you're going to get it. Let's remind ourselves who's going to be involved in these negotiations this next offseason. The Dodgers already have Freddie Freeman locked in. So that is probably the New York Mets or the Yankees' biggest competitor out there. A lot of people were throwing out the San Francisco Giants potentially, but they have one of the best first base prospects in all of baseball, who we may see very shortly. And let's be honest, depending on what Ryan Clifford does with the New York Mets, that could also impact a potential Vladimir Guerrero Jr. deal, because supposedly the Mets are very high on Ryan Clifford. The raw power is clearly there. We're seeing it throughout spring training. The guy's probably got a 70+ power rating on the 80 prospect scale, for those of you prospect junkies like myself out here. But those are all things to take into consideration.
Going to go above 3 for their beloved homegrown fan favorite star in Pete Alonso, who I...
Now, think about what he just said right there. The Mets weren't willing to go beyond 3 years with Pete Alonso. There's like a 5-year age difference, number one. Number two, let's not put Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the same stratosphere as Pete Alonso. This guy had 323 last year with 30 home runs, with having one of the worst starts in all of MLB. He is 26 years old. Pete Alonso will be heading into age 31 next year. That's a major difference. That's like comparing why you wouldn't give Brandon Nimmo the contract that Juan Soto got. It's comparing apples to oranges in my mind. Maybe you guys think different. Let me know.
I understand, as you pointed out many times, is 5 years older.
Yeah.
But still, if that's how they look at the first base position, even for their own guy, when they were looking at trading for Vlad Guerrero potentially, it was you trade him, you get him for his walk year like the Yankees did with Soto. He becomes a potential extension candidate. But no one at the Mets is thinking 15 years. And that's no slight on Guerrero. Just no first base.
But who else in baseball is thinking 15 years? You think the Yankees, who all of a sudden got cheap this last offseason, allowing Juan Soto to leave, You know, look at their situation. They didn't do anything at third base. They're moving Chisholm to second base. You have an unknown in Volpe as shortstop, an unknown in Dominguez in left field who can't field a pop fly. They brought in Cody Bellinger via trade, and you have Aaron Judge. Yes, they went out and got Max Fried, but they have plenty of positions that they could have filled in, and they get the stopgap in Goldschmidt. What makes you think they're going to go out there and all of a sudden make Vladimir Guerrero Jr. the highest paid first baseman in the history of baseball and give him a 15-year contract? I don't think anybody's going to do that. Let's not fool ourselves here, people. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not Juan Soto and will not command the contract that Juan Soto got.
Baseman is
years or
years. So
money.
This tells me that he's not as much of a fit for the Mets as he might have been at one point. But having said all that, Sal, I will say, in talking to people about this today to make sure I was on track with my thinking, it is too early to say. Just because a player wants those kinds of years doesn't mean he's going to get them. And if Pete Alonso opts out and goes, which could happen, and Guerrero's out there and the same thing happens to him that happened to Pete, where the market's not developing the way he wants it to,
that's not
going to see the Mets involved, of course. But now we know what he wants, and what the Mets would pay a first baseman are nowhere close.
And that's what we have from Andy Martino. I really think that he's saying that the New York Mets' best option is to keep Pete Alonso over Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I just think that would be irresponsible. We all know Pete Alonso is going to opt out after this season, and we can't be that team that is stuck again at the altar. You got to make your decision, and good thing we don't have to make that decision now, but it's really interesting to see. I would personally like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. going forward after this year. Say see you later to Pete Alonso. Maybe you guys think different, but let's be honest with ourselves. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is light years younger than Pete Alonso, and he's a much better player than Pete Alonso. So some fans are going to sit here and say, I'd rather have Pete Alonso long term. You got to really think about the aspect, the years, the age, everything else. It is a light and day situation. I don't agree with Andy Martino here. I don't think this stuff coming out has anything to do with free agency next year. I think here's the situation. Let me know if you guys agree with me, and I think you will. I think that in the grand scheme of things, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wants to win a championship, and he knows that his best opportunity to win a championship is not ever going to be in Toronto. You have teams like the Red Sox who are up and coming. You have the Orioles who are young as anything with new ownership willing to spend supposedly, and you have the New York Yankees. You look across town, you might have the New York Mets who continue to spend at the top tier of the market. You also have other teams involved, potentially San Francisco, and other teams might potentially get involved. I don't see it being any type of a situation like a Pete Alonso. You're talking about a superstar player, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who completely changes a lineup if you add him to it. If you were to tell me next year your lineup for the New York Mets was Lindor, Soto, Guerrero, that is way scarier than Lindor, Soto, Alonso. And that's not a strike against Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is a very good player, but he has way more holes in his game, in my opinion. Maybe you guys think different. Let me know in the comments below. But that's what we have in regard to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Thanks so much for sticking around. And as Met content comes out, I will be sure to bring it to you. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video. And until next time, let's go Mets. Peace.